I never meant for any of it to happen. It started with something small, something so unremarkable that if I had just walked away, my life would have gone on exactly as it always had. But temptation has a way of whispering louder when you know you should ignore it. That's what happened the afternoon I found myself standing in front of my sister's bedroom door, my heart hammering in my chest as though I had been caught already, even though nobody was home. It wasn't like I hadn't been in her room before. She was older, always a step ahead of me, always so confident in who she was. Her room reflected it. The perfume bottles lined up neatly on her dresser, the framed photos of her laughing with friends, the row of shoes under her bed, all of it radiated this effortless sense of belonging to herself. I envied her for that. She seemed so sure of what she wanted, who she was, where she was headed. Meanwhile, I spent most days floating between versions of myself that never seemed to land. That afternoon, I had gone in for something innocent. Borrowing her headphones, I think. But when I pulled open her closet door, the world shifted. It wasn't just a collection of clothes. It was a theater, a gallery, a stage waiting to be stepped onto. Dresses in every color swayed slightly on their hangers, like they were breathing. The smell of fabric softener and faint perfume clung to them. Shoes were stacked on the floor in neat rows, flats and heels, sandals and boots. And then, tucked away on the top shelf, boxes of accessories, scarves, jewelry, makeup kits she'd collected over the years. I should have closed the door. I should have turned around. But instead, I just stood there, frozen, like a thief stunned by the glittering treasure they'd stumbled across. My fingers itched. My chest felt tight. Something about those clothes called to me in a way I couldn't explain, like they were waiting for me specifically. At first, I told myself I was just curious. Just looking. I slipped a single dress from the rack, a simple pale blue one with thin straps, and held it up in front of myself. In the mirror across the room, the fabric dangled against my chest, and for a second I saw not me, not the version of myself I was used to, but something softer, something fragile and almost beautiful. My breath caught. I laughed nervously and hung it back up, like maybe that would erase the thought. But the thought wouldn't leave. It grew louder, pressing at me. What if I tried it on, just for a moment? No one would ever know. The house was empty. The afternoon sun was slanting through the blinds, painting stripes across the floor. There was silence everywhere, the kind of silence that made you feel safe but also dangerously exposed. My hands shook as I unhooked the dress again and stepped into it. The fabric slid down over me like a secret being revealed. It was loose in some places, tight in others, not quite fitting but close enough to make me feel transformed. My reflection in the mirror was strange, unfamiliar, yet hauntingly right. My face didn't match, not yet, but the outline of something new was there, something I had never allowed myself to see before. My stomach twisted with nerves, but at the same time, warmth spread through me. I touched the fabric, smoothing it over my body, and felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. It was at that exact moment that I heard the sound. A click downstairs. The front door. My heart plummeted. My sister was home early. Panic surged through me. I scrambled, nearly tripping over the hem of the dress as I tried to peel it off. My hands fumbled with the straps, and I heard her footsteps on the stairs. Every creak of the wood echoed like a drum in my ears. By the time I yanked the dress halfway off, I knew I didn't have enough time. I shoved myself into the closet, heart racing, and pulled the door nearly shut just as her bedroom door opened. I stood there in the dark, surrounded by her clothes, the scent of them thick in the air, still halfway tangled in that pale blue dress. My breath was shallow, my body trembling. She hummed softly to herself as she moved around the room, completely unaware that I was hiding only a few feet away. My back pressed against the closet wall, my palms sweating, I tried to will myself into silence. Minutes passed like hours. She set her bag down, opened her window, tapped at her phone. My mind was spinning with what would happen if she opened the closet. She would see me, caught in the middle of something I couldn't explain, caught in her world that I had no right to touch. The humiliation would be unbearable. But she didn't open the door. She left the room again after a few minutes, and I finally exhaled, collapsing against the hangers. Relief and dread tangled inside me. That had been too close. I should never have risked it. But as I smoothed the fabric of the dress again in the dark, I realized something else too. The fear hadn't erased the feeling. It hadn't smothered the strange, overwhelming sense of rightness that had come over me when I looked in the mirror. It had only made it stronger. I knew then that this wasn't going to be the last time. That night I could hardly sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that reflection in the mirror again, the pale blue dress draped across me, the hint of something truer than I had ever allowed myself to imagine. My body still buzzed with the memory of it. At the same time, my stomach twisted with guilt. I had crossed a line. It was her closet, her things, her private space. What kind of person sneaks around like that? But alongside the guilt was the pull. The whisper that had started as curiosity was now a constant voice in my head. The way the fabric had clung to me, the way it made me feel almost complete, it wouldn't let me go. I told myself it was just one time, just a mistake, but I knew deep down it wasn't true. I was already thinking about when I could try again. The next chance came faster than I expected. A week later, my sister announced she was going out with friends for the evening. I watched her leave, waving casually, and the moment the door clicked shut, my chest filled with a nervous electricity. My hands trembled as I went upstairs. Each step felt heavy, like I was carrying a secret that was growing too big to hide. Her room greeted me the same as before, but this time I didn't hesitate. I opened the closet and let myself sink into it. The dresses seemed to welcome me, soft and silent, their colors glowing faintly in the dim light. I reached for the pale blue one again, but stopped myself. I wanted to try something different, something bolder. My fingers brushed across fabric after fabric until I settled on a dark green dress with long sleeves and a flowing skirt. When I slipped it on, it fit better than the first one. The way the sleeves hugged my arms, the way the skirt swished softly when I turned, it felt like a costume and yet not a costume at all. It felt like stepping into a skin I had been missing without knowing it. In the mirror, my breath caught again. My hair was wrong, my face plain, but the outline of who I might be shimmered just beneath the surface. I rummaged through the box of accessories on her shelf, my heart racing faster with each second. I found a thin necklace, a silver chain with a small pendant, and clasped it around my neck. It dangled delicately against the fabric, catching the light. The small detail made everything feel more real. I remember whispering something to myself, barely audible. Something like, "There you are." The words startled me because I didn't even know I had thought them until they slipped out. The transformation wasn't just about how I looked. It was about how I felt in my skin. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was borrowing space in my own life. I felt like I belonged, even if only for those stolen minutes in her room. But then I heard it again. The sound that made my stomach flip. The creak of the front door. My sister wasn't supposed to be back yet, but I heard her voice calling up the stairs. I froze, panic flooding me. I scrambled back into the closet, clutching the necklace in my fist, heart pounding louder than my thoughts. Her footsteps approached, lighter than before, humming the same tune she always did when she was distracted. I couldn't breathe. The closet door stayed shut, but this time she lingered longer in the room. I could hear her rifling through papers, dropping her keys on the dresser. My whole body shook, trapped between the thrill of what I had just done and the terror of being discovered. When she finally left again, I nearly collapsed in relief. But I knew it couldn't go on like this forever. The risk was too great, the danger too sharp. And yet the thought of stopping felt impossible. I was hooked, pulled deeper each time. The next day at school, I caught myself drifting in and out of conversations. My friends joked, teachers lectured, but all I could think about was the way that skirt had swished when I turned, the way the necklace had made my chest feel delicate, how right it had felt to whisper those words to my reflection. I began to realize this wasn't just about playing dress-up. This was about me. Something I had buried without even realizing it was clawing its way to the surface. I tried to fight it, I really did. But the urge always returned, stronger than before. Each time I was alone, I found myself back in her closet. First it was dresses, then shoes, then makeup. The first time I brushed color onto my lips with trembling hands, I nearly cried. It wasn't neat, It wasn't convincing, but it was enough to tilt my reflection towards something I couldn't stop chasing. The suspense of nearly getting caught became part of it too. Every creak in the house, every car pulling into the driveway, sent adrenaline rushing through me. Sometimes I told myself the risk was why I did it, that it was just the thrill. But deep down I knew the truth. The risk wasn't the reason. It was the cost. And one evening, the cost came due. I had gone too far that night. I had slipped into a soft pink dress, belted at the waist, and matched it with a pair of her shoes, simple flats, nothing fancy, but they made my posture change, made me walk differently. I had even styled my hair with one of her scarves, pulling it back so that for a fleeting second in the mirror, I saw not the boy I had always been told I was, but someone else entirely. Someone who felt possible. And then the door opened. I didn't even have time to hide. Her voice froze me in place before I could even turn. She stepped into the room and stopped mid-sentence, the words dying in her throat as her eyes landed on me. For a long moment, there was no sound. Just the thudding of my heart and the weight of her stare. I stood there in her pink dress, her scarf in my hair, her shoes on my feet. My hands twitched uselessly at my sides, unsure whether to rip everything off or just stand frozen, as though stillness could somehow erase the image she was seeing. My mouth opened, but no words came out. She didn't yell. She didn't laugh. She didn't move at all. She just stared, her brows furrowing in confusion, then softening in something else, something I couldn't name. I wanted to disappear. My throat burned, tears stinging at the corners of my eyes, but still I couldn't speak. Finally, she broke the silence. Her voice was soft, hesitant. What are you doing? It was the question I had been dreading, but it was also the question I had been asking myself for weeks. I wanted to answer, but every explanation I tried to form felt weak, pathetic, shameful. I dropped my gaze to the floor, my chest heaving. The word cracked. I tried again, but my voice wavered. I'm sorry. I don't know. Another long pause. She took a step closer, slowly, like she was approaching a wild animal that might bolt. I flinched, gripping the hem of the dress, crumpling the fabric in my fists. You're wearing my clothes, she said, but her voice wasn't accusing. It was steady, curious, like she was trying to understand. I'll put them back, I stammered. I didn't mean, please don't tell Mom and Dad. Her expression shifted at that. She exhaled, glancing at the scarf in my hair, the necklace still dangling from my neck. When she looked back at me, her eyes weren't sharp or mocking. They were searching. You've been doing this for a while, haven't you? She asked quietly. I swallowed hard. The denial rose automatically, but my voice betrayed me. Yes. Something in her face softened, though I couldn't tell if it was pity or understanding. She sat down on the edge of her bed, still watching me. Why? The word cut deep, not because it was harsh, but because it was the one I didn't know how to answer. My hands shook harder as I tried to form words. It's not. I don't know if it's just curiosity. When I wear them, I trailed off, choking on the lump in my throat. Her tone stayed calm, almost gentle. You feel what? I forced the words out, my voice cracking. Like myself. Silence again. My tears finally spilled, streaking down my cheeks. I wiped them away clumsily, smearing the faint makeup I had tried earlier. Shame burned hotter than ever, but alongside it was the strange relief of saying it out loud. She nodded slowly, as though piecing something together. Okay. That was all she said at first. Just okay. Then, after a moment, she added, You don't have to hide it from me. I stared at her, disbelief washing over me. You're not mad. Her lips curved into a small, sad smile. I don't think mad is the right word. Surprised, sure. Maybe a little shocked. But not mad. The air in the room shifted. The panic in my chest loosened just slightly, though it didn't disappear. I still felt raw, exposed, but I wasn't being torn apart the way I had feared. I should have told you, I whispered, my voice breaking. Maybe, she said. But I get why you didn't. I sank into the chair by her desk, unable to stand any longer. My legs were trembling too much. She stayed on the bed, watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. The silence stretched between us again, but this time it wasn't heavy with dread. It was cautious, tentative, like new ground being tested. After a while, she asked, "Do you want me to help you? I mean, if this is who you are, or part of who you are, maybe it doesn't have to be this terrifying secret." The words stunned me. I looked up, tears blurring my vision. The offer felt impossible, unreal. For so long, I had lived with the certainty that if anyone found out, they would hate me for it. And here she was, offering help instead. "I don't know," I admitted, my voice barely a whisper. "I'm scared." Her smile widened just a little. "Yeah, I can see that. But you don't have to do it alone." The warmth in her words sank into me, mixing with the fear, the shame, the confusion. It didn't erase any of it, but it gave me something new, hope. That night, when I finally took off the dress and wiped away the smeared makeup, I didn't feel like I was erasing what I had done. I felt like I was taking a pause, like there would be a next time, and this time, I wouldn't have to hide. The days after she caught me were strange. At first, I expected her to change, to treat me differently, to whisper about me when I wasn't around. But she didn't. She carried on as though nothing had happened, except now when we passed in the hallway or sat across from each other at dinner. Her eyes lingered on me just a little longer, like she was watching for something I couldn't quite see. One evening, a week later, she knocked on my bedroom door. I opened it, heart thudding, expecting the conversation I had been dreading all week. Instead, she held out a small paper bag. "Here," she said, pushing it into my hands. I peeked inside. A compact mirror, a set of makeup wipes, and a tube of lip gloss sat nestled in tissue paper. My throat tightened. "What is this?" Her expression softened. "Training wheels," she said. "I figured if you're going to experiment, you might as well have your own stuff instead of raiding mine all the time." The kindness in that gesture nearly broke me. I clutched the bag like it was fragile, tears prickling at the corners of my eyes. "You didn't have to." "I know," she interrupted, her voice gentle. "But I wanted to. Anne, I don't think you should feel ashamed of this." That night, alone in my room, I opened the mirror and stared at myself for a long time. My reflection felt different now that someone else knew, someone who hadn't rejected me. When I smeared the gloss clumsily across my lips, I laughed through tears, wiping it off and trying again. It wasn't about perfection. It was about finally giving myself permission. Over the next weeks, she began to help me more. At first it was small, showing me how to apply eyeliner without stabbing myself, teaching me how to match colors without looking washed out. She teased me gently, but never cruelly. Each lesson was filled with patience, as though she had decided that if I was going to take this path, she would walk it with me. One Saturday afternoon, she pulled me into her room with a mischievous grin. "We're doing a full look today," she announced. "Outfit, hair, makeup, everything." Panic surged through me, but so did excitement. I sat nervously as she rummaged through her closet, tossing tops and skirts onto the bed. She held one against me, tilting her head. "This color works for you," she murmured, half to herself. Eventually she settled on a simple floral skirt and a soft white blouse. When I slipped into them, I felt my chest tighten with something I couldn't name. It wasn't just dress up anymore. It was a glimpse of the person I might be if I had the courage. She brushed out my hair, tied it back with a ribbon, and applied makeup carefully, step by step. My heart pounded with every stroke, every dab, every glance in the mirror. When she finished, she stepped back, her smile wide. "Look," she said. I turned to the mirror. For the first time, I didn't just see fragments or outlines. I saw her, the version of me I had only barely imagined. My throat closed. Tears welled up, blurring the reflection, but even through them I could see how much closer I was. I whispered, almost afraid to breathe the words, "That's me." Her hand squeezed my shoulder gently. "Yeah," she said softly. "That's you." From then on, it became something we shared. Whenever the house was empty, she would help me try new outfits, experiment with new styles. Sometimes I laughed at myself, tripping over shoes or smudging lipstick until it looked like a disaster. Sometimes I cried, overwhelmed by the weight of wanting something I wasn't sure I was allowed to have. Through it all, she stayed beside me, steady and kind. But the secrecy still hung over us. At school, with friends, with our parents, I was still the same as always. The contrast grew heavier each time I looked in the mirror and saw who I could be. It felt like living a double life, one safe and invisible, the other fragile but real. One evening, as I carefully folded one of her skirts back into place, I whispered, "I wish I didn't have to hide." She glanced at me, her expression thoughtful. "You don't always have to," she said quietly. "Maybe not from everyone. Maybe not forever." The idea terrified me. I shook my head quickly. "No. If they knew. They might surprise you," she said, cutting me off gently. "You thought I'd hate you too, remember?" Her words lingered in my mind long after. Could anyone else accept me the way she had? The thought both thrilled and terrified me. For now, it was just a dream, but even dreams can change you. Weeks turned into months. With her guidance, I grew bolder, more comfortable. I started to recognize myself not just in the mirror but in flashes, how I carried myself, how I smiled when I caught sight of the ribbon in my hair. Slowly, the lines blurred between the person I was supposed to be and the person I was becoming. And then came the night that forced everything forward. We were home alone, experimenting as usual. I wore a soft cardigan over a simple dress, my makeup light but neat, my hair pulled back with care. For once, I felt calm, almost peaceful. And then the doorbell rang. My stomach dropped. She froze too, her eyes wide. "It's probably just a delivery," she whispered. But then the sound of our neighbor's voice floated through the window. She was calling my sister's name. Panic surged through me. I rushed toward the closet, but my sister grabbed my arm. "Wait. Don't. She can't see me like this." I hissed, my voice breaking. Her eyes locked onto mine, steady and firm. "Do you trust me?" I trembled, heart racing, every nerve screaming to hide. But her voice anchored me. I swallowed hard and nodded. She squeezed my hand, then walked to the door. When she opened it, our neighbor stepped inside, carrying a borrowed dish. My breath caught as she glanced around, her eyes landing on me. I froze in place, every muscle screaming with shame, expecting laughter, disgust, anything. But she just smiled warmly and said, "Oh, hello. I don't think we've met." The world tilted. My sister smiled easily, sliding in without hesitation. "This is my cousin. She's visiting." My neighbor nodded politely, chatted a moment longer, then left without a second glance. When the door closed, I collapsed into the chair, shaking. "Why did you do that?" I gasped. She knelt beside me, gripping my hands. "Because you deserve to exist outside of closets and shadows," she said firmly. "You deserve to be seen." The words hit me harder than anything else she had ever said. For the first time, I felt the possibility of a life that wasn't hidden, a life where I could step out into the world as myself. I didn't know how or when, but I knew one thing: the closet wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning. After the night with our neighbor, I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. It had been such a small encounter, just a few seconds of conversation, but it changed everything. For the first time, someone outside the two of us had seen me like that, and the world hadn't ended. She hadn't laughed, hadn't questioned, hadn't looked twice. She had simply smiled and spoken to me like any other person. That thought burned in me. It scared me, but it also pulled me forward. I wanted to feel that again, the feeling of being acknowledged, of existing outside the safety of shadows. My sister must have sensed it, because a week later she sat down on the edge of my bed and said, "I think it's time." My chest tightened. Time for what? Her eyes met mine, steady but kind. "For you to go outside. As yourself. Just once. We don't have to go far, but I think you're ready." The words made my stomach twist in knots. My first instinct was to say no, to bury myself deeper into safety. But deep down, I knew she was right. I couldn't stay hidden forever. If I didn't take a step forward, I would always be trapped in that closet, replaying reflections in the mirror, but never letting them breathe in the real world. It took me days to gather the courage. Nights of lying awake, imagining every terrible scenario, people pointing, laughing, whispering. But woven into those fears was the memory of our neighbor's polite smile, the way she had accepted my sister's quick explanation without a second thought. Maybe the world wouldn't crumble after all. The morning finally came. My sister chose the outfit carefully, a soft sweater paired with a skirt, simple flats, and a little makeup, enough to soften my features without drawing too much attention. She brushed my hair back with gentle hands, her movements steady as my nerves trembled. When I looked in the mirror, I hardly recognized myself, not because the reflection was strange, but because it felt real. My heart pounded in my chest, and I whispered, "I can't do this." "Yes, you can," she said firmly, her hands resting on my shoulders. "And I'll be right there with you." We left the house together. Every step toward the door felt like a battle. My palms were sweating, my legs shaking, but I forced myself forward. The air outside hit me like a wave, cool, sharp, filled with every sound magnified by my nerves. I felt like the whole world was staring, even though the street was quiet, only a few people walking in the distance. We walked slowly, side by side. My eyes darted everywhere, expecting someone to shout or laugh, but no one did. A woman passed us, smiling politely before continuing on her way. A man jogged past without even glancing. The world didn't collapse. It just kept moving. Each second stretched like forever, but with each one, my fear loosened just a little. My sister chatted casually, pointing out a new store sign, asking if I wanted coffee, grounding me in normalcy. Her calm presence was the anchor I clung to. Finally, we reached a small cafe near the corner. My chest felt like it might explode as we stepped inside, the bell over the door chiming softly. A few heads turned, glanced, then looked away again. My hands shook as we ordered drinks, my voice barely above a whisper, but the barista didn't blink. She just smiled, took our order, and handed us our cups. Sitting at that little table, sipping coffee while sunlight streamed through the window, I felt something I had never felt before: freedom. Fragile, new, terrifying, but real. For the first time, I wasn't just an idea in a mirror. I was here, in the world, living as myself. Tears stung my eyes, and I quickly wiped them away, embarrassed. My sister noticed, her smile gentle. "You did it," she whispered. I nodded, unable to speak. My chest was too full of everything: fear, relief, joy, the weight of all the years I had hidden. The walk home was lighter. My steps steadied, my breathing slowed. When we finally reached the house, I collapsed onto the couch, exhausted but alive in a way I had never been before. That night, lying in bed, I replayed the day over and over. The fears hadn't vanished, but they no longer controlled me. I had stepped outside the closet, literally and figuratively, and the world hadn't fallen apart. It had welcomed me, quietly, simply, like it welcomed anyone else. And I realized something important. The closet had never really been about clothes. It had been about me, about the part of myself I had locked away out of fear. Being caught in her closet had felt like the worst moment of my life, but in truth, it had been the beginning. The moment the lock cracked open and the real story started. I don't know what comes next. I know there will be challenges, hard conversations, and days when fear creeps back in. But I also know now that I'm not alone. I have my sister, I have myself, and I have the strength of that first step. And that's enough to keep walking.